Let's talk about mindset, but let's use science since I've been saying it for years, but now I have data to back it up. Do you know that 87% of successful people attribute their success to mindset shifts? And I found another study that said 96% of entrepreneurs admit to negative self-talk, yet neuroscience shows that our words literally rewire our brain's neural pathways. So what if our biggest obstacle wasn't our strategy, but it was the words that we were speaking to ourselves? So welcome back to the Mind of Your Show. This is the show for entrepreneurs who know that scaling their business isn't just about strategies and tactics. It's about breaking free from outdated business models, marketing tactics, copy and paste, and the things that make your soul need a shower, all so that you can grow and scale in alignment by mastering your mindset, which is what we're talking about today. Refining and building a world-class customer journey to retain, keep, and find new customers and to create marketing that truly connects with who you are and your audience. And so today I talk about the power of our words. I talk about how they either breathe life into our dreams or drain energy from them. And this is the one topic that's changed my life. And in full transparency, I'd say in my coaching with my clients and with my mentors, 75% of the conversations are mindset, 25% are strategies and tactics that follow. And so I share in this episode a 3-part framework so that you can use your words to create the reality that you want, not just describe the one that you have, but we dive into how when you give pain a voice, it gives it power, the science behind how words shape our reality, the 3-step framework for transforming your self-talk, how to catch and correct the limiting language, and practical tools for speaking life into your goals. Because your words are not just sounds, they're the seeds you plant for tomorrow's harvest. And so I wanted to throw a couple stats out for you. People who use positive self-talk show 40% higher achievement rates. Negative self-talk reduces problem-solving ability by 31%, and leaders who practice intentional language see 45% better team results. So I unpack all of that in today's episode. I cannot wait to hear from you, share your takeaways. But without further ado, let's get into the show. Have you ever caught yourself saying, this is too hard, I'm not good at this, I can't do this, things never work out for me? What if I told you through experience and a whole lot of coaching that I know this to be true, that every time we say those words, we're not just describing our reality, but we're actually creating it. And I was inspired because I saw a quote and a talk from Jesse Itzler this morning. If you don't know him, you should know who he is, incredible author, sharing a metaphor and a story from an incredible Navy SEAL who I also look up to. And the core idea is really simple. And this is something I've navigated in my life and become a victim and also a victor of, is that the words that we speak either breathe life into our dreams and into our future and into our goals, or it drains the energy out of them. And the worst, and which I did learn from a Navy SEAL, is that when we give our pain or our complaints a voice, we give it power. And today we're going to shift this. And I'm sharing this today because this has been the core of at least 5 conversations this week where I got spoken into from a friend of mine who called me out. And I've had multiple clients and people in conversations where a simple shift in our mindset with the language that we use creates a drastically different field of results to show up in our life. But the words that we repeat, whether we repeat them out loud or we repeat them in our head, become our beliefs. And our beliefs shape our behaviors, and we act in accordance with those behaviors based on those beliefs. And so if we're constantly speaking, if we're constantly choosing to communicate internally to ourselves or out loud about our struggle, we're actually reinforcing the thing that we're trying to break free from. And the hardest part about this concept is that it's so simple. I doubted it for so long. But it's really about a simple mindset shift and a couple practical tools to start speaking life into our business or into our goals or into our personal growth, and stepping away from creating this reality that we really don't want. And words are a creative force. Now, you know me, I'm unapologetic about my relationship with Jesus. There's biblical truth in it. Proverbs 18:21 says the tongue has the power of life and death. But science also backs this up as well. Because words don't just describe, what they really do in our brain is they direct our focus and energy to things that we're looking at or we want to see more of. And in science, it's called the RAS, or the reticular activating system. It's what our brain filters and what we see. And what we see and experience is based on the things that we say and the things that we believe. And we talked about this in an entire episode with my brother TJ, who's a master of the mind. And so understanding that the power of the words that we use also dictate the beliefs that we have, which align the behaviors. But those words also, for a lack of a better analogy, put sunglasses on, and those sunglasses are filtered to see more of those things that we speak about. And when we understand the power of words, it leads us to point number 2, which is giving pain a voice gives it power. And this is something that in the Marine Corps was drilled into me. But on the other side of it, I love how Chad, and his name's Chad Smith, the Navy SEAL who teaches this concept. When you constantly talk about what's wrong, we actually reinforce it in our mind and body. And this is not an invitation to ignore warning signs or red flags or think that I need to suffer my way through. But in the game that we play of life and business, if we're choosing to follow on actions, if we're choosing to go to the gym because we like the results on the other side and want to perform at a peak, if we're choosing to prioritize certain values in our life and say no to certain things, if we're choosing to spend more time with our family, like me, my son is my number one priority, and I choose to be with him. If I don't go to a speaking engagement or if I cancel a meeting because he requires me, I can go in that one of 2 ways. I'm like, oh, it's so hard. I don't want to do this. I'm sacrificing, but I'm really lying to myself and I'm looking at it in the wrong lens. And so when you constantly talk about what's wrong, we actually reinforce that in our mind and in our body. And it actually anchors in that belief system deeply. And so as an example, saying I'm stuck is one way to stay stuck versus I'm figuring it out. I'm learning as I go. One keeps us in struggle and the other opens us up to solutions because we're shifting our perspective. Pain is real. Challenges are real. Resistance is real. But our job is to acknowledge it and not amplify it. So we acknowledge its existence, and then we choose to speak into a different reality that inspires us or motivates us or encourages us to take a different action. And so when it comes down to this is really about how do we shift these patterns? How do we shift the way that we speak? How do we speak things into life instead of taking life out of them? And it really talks about, and what you really end up doing when you talk about this the right way and shift this is you end up rewiring your brain. And so the way that I broke this down is in really 3 simple chunks. Chunk number 1 is catch and correct. Chunk number 2 is speak what you want to see. And then chunk number 3 is surround yourself with life-giving words. So part number 1, I don't know why I called it a chunk, but really focus number 1 is catch and correct. And this is where we start to listen to our own words, especially the ones we say in frustration. When we have a plan, when something doesn't go our way, and we get frustrated, we get angry, we get sad, we get to listen to the words that we use to describe that situation. Because when we start to have an awareness of them, it starts to shift how we see them. And once you start to catch them, you can replace the limiting language with an empowering alternative or a perspective shifting alternative. And so tangible examples. If you catch yourself saying, I'm terrible at this, you can say, I'm learning and improving. If you catch yourself, and this is one of mine, I'm overwhelmed. I reframe that to, I'm prioritizing what matters most. There's even parts of this where if you've listened to this podcast long enough or seen me speak where I've done this publicly and out loud, where I will say something and I'm like, oh, cancel, hold on. And I'll reframe it and say it again because our mind is a muscle and it's something that requires intentionality and effort, right? I think about every time I have a negative thought or I share a negative phrase or I speak out loud something that isn't empowering. It's like I'm planting a weed in my own garden. But the moment I catch myself planting the weed, I can pull it out, throw it away, and plant a seed there instead. And so part number 1 is becoming aware and catching and correcting it when it happens at the source, which is inside of our brain. And as Sharon Lechter says, who I love this woman dearly, she wrote Outwitting the Devil. She says our thoughts dictate our words, which dictate our actions. And so the earlier and earlier we catch those thoughts, the faster we're able to replace them. And those thoughts will then dictate the words that we speak, and then it will dictate the actions that we take following those words. And so part number 1 is about catching and correcting. Part number 2 is speaking what we want to see. And so if we think about the words that we use, our words should serve as a guiding light or a lamppost for where we're going, not a replay of where we've been. And I'll never forget one of my first ever personal development coaches, Lisa Koutman. She said, your biggest problem is you're trying to drive the boat looking out the back. She'd call it back of the boat thinking. If you're looking out the back of the boat, you're going to crash. But if you're constantly looking and speaking into where you want to go, it aligns our focus, or that part of our brain, our reticular activating system, to take the actions and behaviors that align with the direction where we want to go, instead of constantly reacting to where we came from. And so this is really about declaring who we are becoming, not just what you're feeling. So there's books on this, like Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy, or Nicole LePera's How to Do the Work. But this frame in our brain changes our perspective, which allows us to take the actions needed. So an example of like speaking what we want to see, instead of saying my business is struggling, instead you say, I'm building momentum every day. Or instead of saying, I haven't lost the weight yet, you focus on, I have more energy, I'm making progress, and I'm being consistent. And the situation's the same, but how we speak about the situation dictates our ability and typically our success to see it all the way through, because we're giving power to the words that we use. And I think as a parent, this is really, really easy, because I constantly and consistently speak into my son. Because if I spoke to my son the way that I've spoken to myself in the past or internally, I wouldn't be a good parent, nor would I be proud of myself. And so focus number 2 is speaking into what we want to see, like genuinely speaking it into existence. And then we get to focus number 3, which is surround yourself with life-giving words. The voices that we listen to influence our own. So be intentional about what content you consume. Be intentional about what conversations you're having. Be intentional about the thoughts that you're having, and focus on speaking possibility, not limitation. And this is where environmental design really comes in. I've talked about it on the podcast a ton, but I will tell you that my life drastically changed when I started being rabid about what I consume. I'll own this all day. I used to love watching Kill Tony, and I still love comedy, but I struggle with it now. I struggle with the way that people are joked with and made fun of, and some of the things that are said, and I stopped watching it. One of my favorite musicians as a kid was DMX. I really can't listen to it anymore, and I've replaced those things with things that inspire me or give me life or speak positively. I look at my friend circle, and what I love about my friend circle, like my best friend TJ, who's on his way over here in a little while, or my inner circle of people, is that when we understand these 3 focuses on how to give life through our words, the first one being catch and correct. I also love that when I'm at dinner at TJ's on Sundays and I say something disempowering, he'll be the first one to check me so that I can correct it. And so we get to be intentional about what we fill into our brain. And my buddy Jim Quick said this, and I think we talked about it on his podcast early on in the show, is that our brains are supercomputers. And what we consume is programming it to dictate how we operate in the world. And so when you surround yourself with life-giving words, what you're really doing is being intentional about what is constantly and consistently going into your brain that's tuning your reticular activating system to be focused on the positive. Because our inner dialogue, the thoughts that we have, the ones that run through our brains constantly, is genuinely shaped and molded by the things that we hear the most. So it's our job to be intentional to ensure that the things we hear, to ensure that the things we're consuming are building us up and not tearing us down. And I wanted to record this podcast, and I wanted to talk about this today because this is one of those things that's genuinely a muscle. And if you don't use it, you lose it. But the more you use it, the more you win. And as simple as it sounds in nature, sometimes it can be a struggle to impart it, to implement it. And I know there's moments in my life when things get hard with the divorce or with business deals that fell through, or with things that have happened that are hard, or deaths that I experience, or people that I lose, or things not happening. It's not always easy to shift the mind. It's not always easy to shift the language patterns. And this isn't about perfection. It's really about progress. It's about moving through it. And when we catch it, being aware of it and flexing this muscle over and over. But there are moments, and I'm adding this as like a bonus part to the podcast, where I've struggled because at times I just feel like I need to scream. I just need to be right for 30 seconds. I just need to be right for a minute. And so even when I'm in this and I'm utilizing this to focus on positivity, there are things that happen and roadblocks that happen that tend to derail me. So I made a rule with myself that when it's really that bad, or speaking something new into existence doesn't work, I made a rule that I'm allowed 30 seconds to be right about whatever it is that I'm feeling. So I set a timer, and for 30 seconds, and sometimes I do this with a friend, sometimes I do it with my partner, I'm like, hey, I just need 30 seconds. And they know they just need to let me vent. And I turn into the biggest crybaby, the biggest whiner, truthfully, the biggest victim. And typically I never make it to the end of the 30 seconds, because just me allowing it out and not judging it, not making it wrong, starts to shift my perspective. And I'm like, oh, I'm all good. Here's what I'm focused on. Here's where I'm going. But I think the important part of all of this is that we are in the driver's seat and we are in control. And the thoughts that we have and the words that we speak dictate the behaviors that we end up taking. They dictate the actions that we take. And if the behaviors that we're taking are aligned with who we were in the past or what we're trying to avoid, we're actually making it harder to become a new version of ourselves. We're making it harder to achieve a new goal because we're anchoring in those beliefs over and over. But when we become aware of something like this, when we become aware of the power of our words and how they can either give life or they can take it away, it gives us a tool to be able to make sure that with as much intentionality as possible, that we're setting ourselves up to win in every bucket of life so that we can achieve those goals, so that we can prioritize family, so that we can learn a new skill, that we can get a new client, that we can achieve a new fitness goal, that we can learn or achieve something that we set out to achieve by speaking into it over and over and over. And just like everything in life, just like everything in business, there's no finish line. It's kind of falling in love with the process to be the best version of ourselves, to perform our best, to think our best, to feel our best, to have the best perspective. And when you bring these into your awareness, there's some simple tools like the ones I shared today and some simple tweaks that we can start to utilize that start to shape our reality and make things feel easier, give us the capacity to see them. We start to see solutions instead of challenges. We start to see possibilities instead of pain. And we start to fall in love with the process the more that we're tuning our bodies in, tuning our brains in, and we're using science with our reticular activating system to help set the field up for us to win. And for me, faith of operating in deep gratitude and being grateful for everything that shows up. But you've heard me talk about on this podcast 1,000 times that success is an internal game and how our perspective is the difference between our prison and our power. And this is the actual tangible muscle that is utilized to be able to shift from overwhelm to gratitude, to be able to shift from a disempowering thought to an empowering thought. And so I have a challenge for you. For the next 24 hours, I want you to catch yourself with how you're speaking when you struggle, and I want you to flip it. I don't want you to judge. I don't want you to be upset. I don't want you to make it wrong. I want you to be curious and excited about it. Because if you catch yourself in one of those, I'm so frustrated, amazing. What are you saying and what are you thinking? And then I want you to challenge yourself to switch it from taking life to giving life. Because your words are not just sounds. They are the seeds that you are planting for your tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month. And I promise you, whatever seeds you plant in that garden will grow. And so I would invite you to plant words that are empowering, that are loving, that are supportive, that give you power, that give you life, and that give you possibility. And I would also love to know what some of your biggest language shifts are, because I can say that this has single-handedly supported me more than any other mindset shift that I've ever worked on. Because at the end of the day, I'm creating my reality through the words that I speak. And the deeper I get into my Bible and the multiple times I read it and the more scripture I find, it doesn't matter what lens you come into this in. If you're coming through the lens of faith, you know this is in your Bible a number of times. If you're coming this the lens secularly and you use silence or science, this is how your reticular activating system works in your brain. And in both buckets, we have the ability to give life to ourselves, to our goals, and to our dreams. And we also have the ability to take it away and drain it if we're not intentional about the seeds that we plant. And so if you have a language shift, if you have one that's worked for you, a reframe that works for you, send it to me on Instagram, DM it to me so I can use it. I can add it to my arsenal, but also take this an invitation to try it today. I promise you it's really, really easy. And one of the hacks that I do, and I consistently do this, is I have a background on my phone of when I was 5 years old. And I look at that photo when I'm really struggling or when I'm having a bad day or it seems like nothing's going my way and I'm just so frustrated. And I ask myself, would I speak these words out loud to that version of me? And it's easy because I have a son that I look at every day. Would I speak to him the way I'm speaking about myself? And the faster that you can catch it and reframe it, the faster you can start to use your words to give life. And the more you use this muscle, the stronger it gets. And the craziest part about this one is you can't overtrain it. So it's only upside. So this was on my heart to share today, and I wanted to share it. And so I'm just sending you love. I'm sending you prayers. I'm sending you light. I'm sending you power. I'm sending you positivity. And I invite you to use this and also give this gift to other people, because you can also do the same for people. You can speak into your customers. You can speak into your clients. You can speak into your team, and it will have a drastically different result than what most people think will happen. So be intentional about it. Use your words to give power, use your words to give life, and have an absolutely beautiful day. I love you. I appreciate you. And remember, relationships will always beat algorithms, especially the one with yourself, which, based on today's episode, starts with the thoughts that we think, followed by the words that we use, because that dictates the actions that we're going to take. I'll see you in the next episode.